Today is day 57 of the podcast, and we've been talking about the wilderness. I want you to realize that Israel was led to the wilderness by God and then through the wilderness by God, just as Jesus was led to the wilderness and then through the wilderness, temptation and trial. You know, the wilderness redefines for us what's important. So we have that same kind of a journey that we're on. Sometimes we believe God's promises are going to keep us from trials when He really means to keep us through trials with His promises. Remember what I shared about how Israel had put the Lord to the test on the day of their trial in the wilderness? And I shared about my own story about suffering not being an indication of His presence or His absence. I want you to consider these two verses from Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18 says, "For since He Himself was tempted in that which He has suffered, He is able to come to the aid of those who are tempted." He was tempted in what He suffered. And then Hebrews 5, verse 8 says, "Although He was a son, He learned obedience from the things which He suffered." When we think about temptation, a whole lot of the time we look at temptation in terms of our appetites and how temptation makes an appeal to our appetites. But what if we are continually being tempted in our sufferings and yielding to that temptation? What do I mean by that? What if we're tempted to find our own way, to relieve our own pain, to somehow comfort ourselves in the midst of a trial and under pressure? You know, there's a narrow way that leads to life. And the Son came to give us our instruction so that we could begin to understand and see that the way through the midst of the wilderness, through the days of our being tried, that those are the opportunities to get to know His ways, His life, that narrow path that leads to the Father. So here's my question for today. What are some of the old ways? Some of the old ways you're tempted to think or act or speak in the midst of your trials?